Monian downs talamu, stalm hina gruagach stu halin.
Hi, I'm Courtney Williams with Outlander Behind the Scenes, bringing you another segment of my interview with Àdhamh Ó Broin. Àdhamh is the Gaelic consultant for Outlander, so he translates the scripts into Gaelic and also teaches the language to the actors. In this segment, we talk about the serendipity that surrounds this project of Outlander. We talk about his favorite episodes and scenes, season 2, and the Bonnie Prince Charlie. Please enjoy this segment of my interview with Àdhamh Ó Broin. All right, we're live.
It's alive.
We're live. For me, it seems like there's a lot of serendipity, alchemy, a lot of these words float around this project with Diana and the books, and then the show, like Sam's birthday is really close to Jamie's birthday, and Kat's birthday is really close to Claire's birthday. And
like synchronicity.
Yeah, exactly. And it just seems to be around this project. Is that obviously your experience too?
Oh, massively at the beginning. Once things go on, of course, and everything's sort of set in place, then it's slightly less so, because obviously, it is developed into a well-oiled machine that then just moves from episode to episode or block to block. But at the beginning, when I think the whole thing was coming together, there's no doubt that everybody was giving it so much positive energy that it almost couldn't have failed to come together. It was definitely like something was just carrying it along, because I remember Ron popped an email out to everybody just saying, look, thank you so much for your time and effort, folks, in this first few weeks, because he says, from where I'm standing with a bit of a bird's eye view of everything, it's amazing how things are coming together. He's like, I almost can't believe how well it's going. So massive thanks, And I just I thought that doesn't not make sense at all. That's completely the way it feels. Do you know what I mean? The production pulled out all the stops, to make sure that we could hit the ground running with the language. And so that first, the boot camp weeks are probably my best memories of the whole thing.
I'd ridden before. I'd done quite a lot of sword stuff in the past, so that was all familiar. The big new departure for me was Gaelic.
What I did initially was to teach everybody the Gaelic numbers 1 to 10, because contained within the numbers are a great amount of sounds that you don't find at all within English. So you were actually literally having to not only retrain people's ears and their minds, but actually their throats as well. They may well be familiar with the sound ah, but were they familiar with the sound ga? They might be familiar with the sound aw, but were they familiar with the sound och? Right, okay, why don't we pop that up on the board, that line?
Yo, a Gaelic show. Yo, a Gaelic show, full of missing track.
But the most important thing for me is authentic pronunciation, is to sound like this language is their first language. They've been brought up speaking it at their mother's knee.
Smashy Roberts meist in a school show, bia lumduo na srack.
They're kind of open to throwing ad-libs in Gaelic. So I'm kind of always in Adam's ear to say, look, can you give us a word for this? Or I'm always looking to throw it in. I got kicked in the nuts in one episode. And I said, what would you say, if you were kicked in the nuts in Gaelic? He said, if it was Av McLachlan's.
The Gaelic has been a challenge. I think it's like going to school for them. So I don't know how they felt about the Gaelic lessons, but they've all been wonderful.
It at first sounded a lot like gobbledygook. I can understand a word of it. It's not like French or German or any other foreign language where you can look at it and say how it looks. You have to learn the sounds to it.
They were amazing. It was definitely it was a big family. And then you get into a routine, and as I say, it becomes a kind of a well-oiled machine, and everyone's got their roles, and you play your role, and you've got to work out how to work out what you're doing within the bigger picture, But it was amazing when we all hit the ground running during that first summer of 2013, and somehow created those first few episodes that are great. And it's funny actually. Episode 1 for me is incredibly nostalgic. Even though there's barely any Gaelic in it at the beginning, I love all the scenes with Claire and Frank. And people say, oh, it's, when they're recommending the show, they go, but just sit through the first episode. The rest is really good. And I'm like, I love that episode. And I don't know, maybe it's just because it has nice memories for me, but I think that episode's got a beautiful atmosphere to it. There's just the total innocence of those two people trying to get back to know each other and get back into contact, spiritually, physically, emotionally, everything. There's a beauty to that, and then it's really harsh, when it's like torn apart. It's harsh, man, But I love that episode, and whenever I see that episode again, it takes me back to that alchemy that you were talking about, to that synchronicity, when everyone just fell headlong into this project and went, none of us really know exactly how it's going to turn out, but we're all going to give it massive energy and hey, let's see what happens,
Is that your favorite episode? Episode 1?
No, I've got different favorite episodes for different reasons. I love episode 5 because there's so much Gaelic in it, and Dougal's final speech. Vajish dar brar and Erim Fain Kernal Chair Crown.
Mar.
Eran Chilical an Arch. Mare Gonul Verduragach Duchasach. Hier gedalaben Hur nam broederen. Nach Chik Shivlum Saharjan. Gusam Fai Sheen Kuchas. Galan and Sassanik Gobra.
With that speech, Graham just boom! It's just, it really almost couldn't have got any better. I mean, if you'd be a native, you'd go, oh, well, I would tweak this a little and I would tweak. But I mean, as someone who doesn't speak the language, Graham just dished that out big time. It was beautifully cut together and it's so powerful. So 5 has all that kind of a feel to it, where the language is really pushed to the fore. The scene where they're wrestling at the start and it's all that bad language.
You know John Donne?
Oh, aye. It's one of my favourites.
What is it they're shouting over there?
Could the bucket not few?
I'm sorry, I don't have any Gaelic.
Well, my lady, they're teasing young Willie. It's his first time on the road with us, and they're encouraging him to have biblical relations with his sister.
Lovely.
No matter what's getting said, the language is so prominent, and Tony's just an outstanding writer and an outstanding person. And that episode's really, I'm very fond of that because of how prominent the language is. And then, for instance, you've got episode 2, which I love because that was where Sam, sort of hit the ground running and just, the punishment scene where he's debating with Colum to take Lear as punishment.
Starvanish. Musachor. Hanech Kalak Vig Utreminje. Brishni and Chrissy Nadal, Agus nach Vavok Krioch and Yeskershaw.
He's offering to take the girl's punishment. What? He's still injured.
Can you the Groisha?
Shikush Jonaka Hashaw.
Ik zou een hoekje weer biel over Noesala.
They're arguing it now.
Hinimi shaw gula mahokris me. Agus. Gelemi kriach faden is biol en jiska vrieshaw.
Hudi Shemus Rua Shaw Yulan. Eka Gantoran Gia Shaki Yunsak Gina Shaw.
He allows it.
Ja, cool. Smashe. Roberts, meester na schoolshow. Jalom door na strach.
He chooses fists. Fists. Rather than the strap.
If you'd have wanted a beating, I'd been happy to oblige you.
Yeah, well, you might have done some real damage.
Watch yourself, laddie. Your uncle is up to something.
You know, I think there's one consonant that's slightly out of place in the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to let that one go. So, you know, the different episodes have different, I mean, for instance, I think the dialogue in episode 6 is outstanding. I think Ira's writing there is just amazing. I mean, a lot will have come from the book, I'm sure, and then I know that Tobias was heavily involved in how that kind of operated as well. But I mean, you know, so there's different episodes of different significance for me for different reasons. You know what I mean?
How about season 2?
There are a couple of episodes coming up, you know, during this season that, you know, that are reading the scripts. They were just mind blowing. So I'm really looking forward to those. I can say no more, but there are some fantastic episodes still to come, believe me. So far, I probably enjoyed the one we just saw, 208. And of course, I think like anybody else, I probably enjoyed it to an extent because I watched it and went, oh, thank goodness all the Gaelic's perfect, you know, or more or less. So, you know, in months...
That's what I was thinking too. I was like, oh, the Gaelic.
Yeah, of course. But, you know, in months to come, you could say, oh, looking back now that you're not just watching with bated breath, you know, and I was heavily involved in making sure that scene with the baby would come out okay and that the Gaelic made sense. And, you know, it's great to sit there in post-production and have them go, now, look, we want this to make sense. How do we make sure it cuts together okay so that, you know, it's not just gobbledygook. So that's great to be involved in that. That's a privilege. But you just never know because obviously it has to go over to LA and then, you know, that's obviously where the final decisions are made and all the rest of it. And you just never know exactly how things are going to come out because you're the Gaelic consultant, not the editor. So to sit and watch it, you're definitely coming up to scenes like that on absolute tenterhooks going, you know, like, so that for me was a big moment when I watched that. And, you know, that scene came together so beautifully.
Did you see it before it came out, or is that your first viewing?
You just see the snippets that are relevant to your job if you get that privilege. And you know, sometimes I do, if it's an important scene like that where the language is really prominent, then I'm able to take, you know, a couple of hours and work with people in the editing side of things and make sure that it comes out as well as humanly possible. You know, once obviously the job's done and season 2 wrapped, then, you know, I come back to being a fan of the show again and sit and watch it and enjoy it and you know, try my best to detach from the work that I was doing and just enjoy the story unfold. And France was fascinating and lush and beautiful, but I mean, there's nothing like being back in Scotland, you know, so it'll be great to see, because some of the episodes I wasn't really involved with at all, you know, on a very cursory level. So that'll just be a whole surprise for me to actually, you know, because I wouldn't have been present on any of the shoots. So it'll be great. I'll be able to watch it literally just like a fan.
You once told me that seeing Andrew Gower play the Bonnie Prince Charlie was a highlight for you. Can you say more about that and why?
I honestly, I mean, people are, you know, they're saying, oh, it's terrible the way he's been portrayed. You know, I just think Andrew's amazing. And I said to him on set, actually, during one of the scenes that he did, that was just outstanding. And I was like, that just blew me away, man. Blew me away. It was just, you know, amazing. It's a massively significant character in Scottish history. So to see him brought to life at all in whatever way, in such, you know, outstanding fashion by Andrew, is hugely significant for Gaels. You know, the Jacobite risings, of course, are you know, the precipitation of the downfall of our culture. So to see that character brought to life so vividly by Andrew is just, it's a bit of a dream come true. And I know a lot of people hate the way that Charlie's been portrayed, you know, by the writers and, you know, what have you. But I think there's something incredibly captivating about it, about the way that the character has been portrayed in the show in season 2, and it's been one of the highlights for me, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, I'm not sure that he was completely daft. You know, there's this sense of which he, you know, in the show, obviously, he's you know, just a kind of sort of entitled maniac. You know, someone who's right on the fringes of sanity. You know, if you look at the 45 Rising and Wiki or wherever, you know, you'll find they actually, you know, made some great successes, but then turned back. And Charlie, of course, was keen to press on to London. And I mean, if he had, the course of history would have been drastically different. So I think I think that element of megalomania was definitely present. But I think he was also pretty inspiring fella. I think he probably could captivate people. And although the character, obviously, of Jamie is quite cynical about Charlie, you know, to other people who are perhaps not as strong-willed as Jamie, he could probably be pretty captivating. He could probably really turn heads in amongst the clans, and obviously did, you know. Right. So it's utterly fascinating to start seeing that chapter played out on the screen.
It's wonderful to see you and talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Valley.
Was it go hen a bojan go get bog a hook me loigut money an downs talamu stalam hina gruagachs tu halin downes boje ddim feoch atol mi fuagut money an downs talamu.